Hi, it's Christy, and welcome back to another episode of Well Intended. We're still in January. Today is Sunday, but when this goes out, it should be Monday. So happy Monday. If you're listening to this on another day, then happy whatever day you're listening to this. I hope you're doing well. I have been fine. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. Busy, both externally and internally. So my brain is kind of messy. That's fine and natural. But of course, feels very frustrating and not nice. Externally, it is almost Lunar New Year. I have been in a bit of a decluttering, home organizing space, which is good. I think it's good. I think it should help with the internal clutter also. And it's good, of course, periodically to reevaluate, again, externally and internally, what you want to keep, what is actually serving you, and what's just been there and staying there because it's been there for a while. So I'm making more space externally so that I can have more space internally. And it feels pretty good. It's also sunny outside, and that always helps. Though I have the curtains closed because I've moved where I'm sitting. Hopefully there won't be too much train noise on the recording, but it sounds really fucking loud where I am right now. I live right next to a train, so it comes by every few minutes. I hope post-production Christy is okay right now. But yeah, the past couple weeks, past few weeks really, I have not been feeling great about the state of my practice, the state of my creative practice as a writer. I felt and have been feeling stuck again. That was what last episode was about. And I skipped writing a piece last week, which I think is fine. I think it's fine if I'm not feeling it to not do it for that particular piece of the puzzle. I am recording because this is a practice that I want to keep up with and continue practicing, because I also think speaking about craft and talking through process and realistic practice, I think, at least for me, is helpful, and I think it will continue to be helpful. But yeah, I've just been feeling kind of shitty, and like everything that I've been trying to write has been trash, or I just have not been feeling great about it. And that's interesting. I had a lot of momentum coming out of my writing program, and then just over the holidays, it stopped, really. I took a break because that was needed, but that was also processing a bunch of stuff. It was processing a bunch of retroactive grief about family stuff, about work stuff, about, the state of my life and the possible state of my future, and generally just kind of being an anxious mess behind whatever curtain I had tried to pull down in my brain that said, "You're fine." But fine is a relative state. And it was also just a really weird time with lots going on, lots of news, lots of discourse. So yes, I have been feeling kind of shitty, and like everything I write is trash, or everything everything I attempt to write is trash. And one of the ways that I go about kind of fixing that is getting back to community. So I haven't been back to a writing group meetup in pretty much all of December and some of November and beginning of January. So a couple weeks ago, I went back to my first one, and it was so good. It was so good and nourishing and fulfilling. And let's see, the notes that I took here, like immediately during that meetup, because I knew I wanted to talk about it, was how important community is to me for inspiration, knowledge sharing, accountability, excitement, perspective, development, informal workshop space. Like during that one, I think I read over 2 pieces and provided feedback like at the table, which was super fun. And then we listened to a story that someone was working on for a workshop. And it was so good. It was so lovely and really encouraging. And that's, I think, what's most helpful for me is like the excitement part and the creation of space for me to hype up people, because that is legitimately one of my favorite things. I really enjoy getting someone excited about their work and like for me to show appreciation for being shared with, being trusted enough to share somebody's like their work with me and to validate I've talked, I think, extensively about feedback and the giving and receiving of it. I think there's just so much that can be encouraged and praised and validated about just the act of being able to share that stuff. And matters of taste don't mean kind of anything in this process. It's about mechanics. It's about what's working for what they're actually trying to do. And that's a really, for me and the people that I know and work with, like that's a really valuable, helpful, and like, again, fulfilling process. And that is what I wanted, and that's what I needed, along with the accountability. So I am really a take initiative person. Like if I see an opening and I know that it's something that I can drive, like this is an action that I can drive, I'm gonna fucking take it. I really do believe, like, if you don't see what you want, like it's that thing of if you don't see the thing that you want in the world, you have to go and do it or make it or create it. I really do believe if you don't see what you want, then it's up to you. You got to go do the thing. If you can't or you don't want to do that, because I do recognize also that people's capacities are limited at different points in their lives for many different reasons, and it's very valid. Identify someone or people who can or who have that capacity, because they're out there. Like I am out here. And really what we need, all that we need, is just a gentle nudge or the indication that this is something that people want and that this is something that people will show up for. Because that's the other thing. I love to organize things, and like I will show up. I am a shower upper. But if other people don't show up, or like there's just like this loss of, I don't know, energy. I don't know that that's really what I'm trying to say. But if people don't show up, like if you, let's say, what am I trying to say? If you do, identify someone or people who can like organize for you, but you then do not show up for this thing, that's gonna discourage this person from wanting to continue doing that. And then you've lost out on this opportunity that you could benefit from. This is not to say that it is not valid for people to evaluate their energy on any given day and say, hey, I really can't do this today. But we're not just looking at, like 1 or 2 or 3 instances. It's like, if it's like, it's a consistency thing over a long haul. And like there are other ways to stay in community. Like with this writing group that I have, there's a core group that comes out most weeks. Of course, people have different work and life responsibilities. That sometimes means that they can't make it, which are, again, super valid, but they still participate in like feedback over email, over messages. They still show up to other events. Like showing up for community is, I think, applicable in many aspects. and they can change with your capacity, with your energy, with your just the changes in your life. So it can look different. It can look different for everybody. But it is, like, for me, especially helpful because I have identified, again, if we go back to whatever episode that was where I said I use other people as ADHD tools, it is helpful for me to go out to a coffee shop much earlier than other people will get there. I will use that time to try and write a little bit. And then when people show up and, we're all writing, then we're writing. A lot of the time we gab, we talk about craft, we talk about community, we talk about whatever, we give feedback, we discuss, different opportunities that people have found, and we celebrate wins, and like it's a good time. But yeah, like that stuff is just as helpful as the actual act of writing, or it can be. Again, everybody's different, but I have found that community is a really helpful resource for so many things. For, again, like opportunities to apply to residencies. We've been talking about that the past couple meetups, different submission opportunities, workshops, events, and also just to like kind of do this, like to hear what other people are really finding helpful in their practice and also what they're struggling with, because it's generally not something that you suffer from as the only person to ever experience that challenge or that issue. So yeah, I am 100% on the validation train, and then it becomes the encouragement train, it becomes the motivation train. And these meetups in this community for me is about helping to sustain my motivation or to get me excited about writing again, which it has done because I've been feeling not good about writing, and to have the accountability. So this is what I wanted and what I needed, and I made it happen. I try to keep it as low pressure as possible. And there have definitely been weeks where it's only been me, but I set the intention that I'm going to go out and do the thing, and I go out and do the thing. So yeah, it's been so lovely, and being back in community has been great. This last one, which was a couple days ago, I did start writing something new, and I don't hate it, but the problem is that I was reminded that you just have to start doing the thing, which I'm very annoyed and frustrated about because part of my nature and an ADHD feature, which is unfortunately not a bug, is task avoidance. So anytime I am told to do something or advised to do something or recommended to do something, a majority of the time, I simply do not want to do it. I don't know if this meme is widely known enough, but there's a meme where maybe you're cleaning your room or something and your parent drops by and is like, makes some comment about, see, I told you to clean your room, or like, why aren't you doing it faster? Or they just don't even see you doing that and they say, hey, didn't I tell you to clean your room? And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And that is task avoidance. I'm wondering if task avoidance is the actual name. I can't remember right now. But the second you're kind of asked to do something, or are perceived to be told to do something, then all of a sudden you don't want to do it anymore, which is really hard for motivation, etc. And is very interesting for me too, because sometimes the task avoidance comes from inside the house, which is to say, I can sometimes tell myself that I need to do something or want to do something, and then all of a sudden I don't want to do it anymore, or I can't bring myself to do it. And therein lies the ADHD dilemma. But in starting to write this thing a couple days ago, I was reminded that one of the things that can happen is you start writing something and you realize that that's not actually the best way that it could be done. So, for instance, the thing that I'm writing, I started writing from the perspective of kind of the victim in this scenario, because I was like, oh, that's, it's a very common perspective, the kind of unknowing person dropped into a situation, and you kind of, like, the reader or the audience finds out along with the person whose perspective we're getting into the story from. But then I realized, as I was writing the sort of antagonist, morally ambiguous villain, that I'm like, fuck, I'm way more interested in this person. I'm always more interested in the morally ambiguous, gray character. That has happened in several things that I've written over the years. So it's one of those things where it's like, you really should have known better. But I had to start writing it to come to that conclusion, or that feeling that, like, something is off here and it's not doing what I want it to do. It's also, I think, maybe the more difficult perspective to take, which is also annoying to me, because I'm like, it's so good and it's so juicy and I want to bite into it, but the work it will take to get there is worth it, but is hard, and that part does discourage the motivation to do it. But I will do it, or I will, attempt to do it. If I don't, let's lose interest in it. Oops. The other ADHD dilemma. But it's also been, I think, a process over the past couple weeks of kind of recalibrating how I feel, as a person, and remembering actually that feeling weird is okay and fine, and that I feel weird all the time. But it's been a weird time, and brain chemistry feels weird. So you can't always predict how it's going to work with you or against you. And I've been grappling with, let's say, the panic of just life and what figuring it out looks like. So I think, and I'm realizing this right now as I'm talking about it, this requires a return to basics, which is part of what kickstarted being able to even write anything close to a piece of creative writing, which is to say that I attended a couple workshops the other night online and had an opportunity to free write a couple times. And free writing, if you're not familiar with the practice, it can look different for different people with the mechanics of it. Essentially, you're setting a time. The most common ones I've seen are 5 minutes and 15 minutes, but you are basically setting a time and you are writing without stopping for that entire amount of time. It doesn't matter what you're writing. It doesn't matter if it makes any sense, if it's organized at all. You are simply trying to put pen to paper and just let it flow. It's particularly good with unblocking things. People use it for journaling, morning pages, but it's one of the first things that we learned as a tool in our writing program. And it is really helpful for kind of keeping a consistent practice, because it's something that is intentionally low pressure, low consequence, hopefully low barrier of entry. You simply need to write for a set amount of time. So during the workshops, because they were online, I was writing down in my little pocket notebook, which I don't normally do, but has been nice. I've been doing a lot more handwriting lately, which feels good. And that's great. So I wonder if there's, a new aspect to my practice that I'm going to be adding. But most of the time I do write on a laptop. And what I'll do for free writing is I will partially close the lid, so not fully, and I will stare up into the corner of whatever room I'm in. And mind you, this is usually in public. I will stare up into the corner of whatever room I'm in and just write. I don't typically use a timer. I'll kind of go until I hit upon a thought or, get unblocked from how a scene is supposed to go, or like what kind of feeling I'm trying to evoke comes to me. And then I'll open up the doc for whatever piece and start writing from there, because I already have the thing in mind, and I'm already thinking about what I want to do from that point on. But I might experiment actually with setting a timer. We were doing 5 minutes during these workshops, and 5 minutes feels like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye, which is interesting. So maybe I will do that. Oh, and then, okay, so after the last episode, I got a really good question about the division or the boundary between fiction and nonfiction if you're trying to write something like memoir, and the fact that we all know that memory isn't the most reliable. And that's such a great question, because it is 1000% something that I have grappled with and, kind of continue to grapple with. And it's also something that comes up frequently enough in conversations that I have had a bunch of them during like these meetups for the writing group, and just kind of in conversation with other writers. Last year is the first time that I had ever heard the term autofiction, which is short for autobiographical fiction, where, certain elements have been fictionalized, or like settings or characters. So there's this feeling that all the things that you should be writing for things like a memoir, which is under nonfiction, must be absolutely truthful and factual, as if you caught the whole thing on film. The example that I always bring up, which is extremely helpful for me, let me go get this book. So this is one of my favorite books that I read last year, called Dinner on Monster Island by Tanya Di Rosario. It is a collection of essays, and there's an author's note right in the beginning, which I will read to you now. This is a work of nonfiction. The events and experiences detailed herein have been faithfully rendered as I have remembered them to the best of my ability. Some names, identities, and circumstances have been changed in order to protect the integrity and/or anonymity of the various individuals involved. Though conversations come from my keen recollection of them, they are not written to represent word-for-word documentation. Rather, they have been retold in a way that evokes the real feeling and meaning of what was said, in keeping with the true essence of the mood and spirit of the event. Any commentary pertaining to public figures, institutions, or policies is intended as personal opinion. So that was super helpful. Super helpful for me, because like a bunch of the memoir stuff that I have been writing or want to write deals with the fact that memory is not reliable. It's also extremely biased and is colored by your experience. So the other thing also is that what you know to be true or perceive to be true could be 100% untruthful for someone else within that context. I do find that very fascinating, but I found it previously very scary, because memory doesn't include all of the context. And also, with this example of memoir, you being the narrator during the present and looking into the past, like you're already coloring the memories with that perspective and that experience. So it's a complicated maybe space to live in, but it really is intent of the author. And then also so you're almost like creating a framework for the reader to contextualize your work in their reading. But I mean, their reading will be an individual experience. Like, you won't be able to control what they will be taking from that reading. So, it's kind of do whatever you want. It's negotiating with yourself and where your boundaries are, how much really factual truth you want to be in there, and what feels true to you. For instance, I wrote a piece that I am really proud of, but it features people who are not actually in my family. It features a house that does not exist. But it also features elements of a conversation that I did have in real life with my parents. And it features how I felt back then as a preteen, also how I feel now, or how I think that this preteen would have felt faced with this conversation. Wow. I mean, it really incorporates all the things that I talked about, which is fiction, fictionalized elements, plus real things, plus looking back into the past from the present. Yeah, it's complicated, but I think that's also what makes it interesting. I think that's also the nature of stories, is they will change over time. So what is the truth that's in them that has stayed relevant, or how has the truth changed to be a different truth, which is more valuable? There are so many factors around storytelling that play into how a story might change. And I think that's really cool and mysterious. So yeah, I mean, I will maybe cap that off with some words of wisdom from my dear friend Jamie, who drops absolute bangers for writing wisdom, or writing advice. Because I was talking to them about this dilemma of having this story where I was really like, what do I categorize this as? And Jamie said, the line between fiction and nonfiction is so thin, and where you put that line is really, it's up to you. And, my mentor asked me, well, does this story still feel true to you? Like, even though there are fictionalized elements, is it still true? And I said, well, yes. And then she was like, yeah, okay, great. Done. That's your answer. That's my other plug for community, is to get validation in that way, and advice in that way. Okay. So recap, take initiative, organize community, and showing up for community can look different. If you can't or don't want to organize, find people who will and show up for them. Just doing the thing is unfortunately still true. Finding low effort and low consequence ways back into practice and consistency really helps. So for writers, free writing is a great exercise. If you haven't tried it, maybe consider trying it out. It might work for you, it might not, but in the process, you might find something else that does the trick. For, illustrators or artists, maybe that's sketching or doodling. If you're navigating the barrier between fiction and nonfiction, I feel like I would say do whatever you want, and you can tell the story that you need to tell in whatever way you want. But I think the generous and responsible thing to do is to offer that context to your reader so that they understand, or better understand, what it is that they're reading and how to, approach your work. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's all for today. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. If you would like to reach out, please send me an email, leave a comment. The email is wellintendedpod@gmail.com. And if you're listening on a podcast app, please rate and review and subscribe. It really helps, and I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.